So I'm grateful to Gary Floyd and Karen Mitchell for the song so far, and of course for our music team for the meditation. So this month is all about giving thanks. And when we give thanks, we can have an attitude of gratitude. And really, an attitude of gratitude is about how we look at life. Yesterday was Halloween, and we all wore masks, or a lot of us wore masks. And with masks, we hide who we are. But this month, we want to look at who we really are and how we look at life, whether or not we are enjoying life and seeing it as something that we're grateful for what we have or sad for what we don't have. And attitude is all about how you see the world. So your question for the week is this: what's the one choice that you can do or be so that you always come from a place of knowing that your attitude about gratitude is a matter of your own consciousness? So one more time. What's the one thing that you can do or be so that you always come from a place of knowing that your attitude about gratitude is about your own consciousness? What I know is life is a journey. And actually, it's two journeys happening at the same time. It's traveling from birth to a lifetime of whatever comes after this lifetime. And the two journeys are one of the outer world, where it's what we do, where we're going to the grocery store, we're going to school, we're going to work, what we're doing, having a relationship, whatever it is. It's about our outer story and how other people see who we are and what we do. And then there's the deeper inner journey, how life is changing us. Who are we becoming? And how are we growing and evolving and deepening and awakening to that spiritual self that lives within inside of us? I love this quote from Mark Nepo. It says, "To journey without being changed is to be a nomad. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and be transformed by the journey is to be a pilgrim." And it's great to talk about pilgrims because it's the month of Thanksgiving. We're all pilgrims, walking to the heart of life itself. Ernest Holmes said that life was an endless journey. And I believe that it's good for all of us to allow more of the divine nature to spiral within us and to spiral that awareness to the fact that God is who we are. And so what does this have to do with an attitude of gratitude? Part of the blessing of what has been is that we see and feel the transformation that has worked within us. When we have an attitude of gratitude, we learn to acknowledge that all of life is part of who we are. And we don't settle and we don't live a small life because we allow ourselves to see all parts of our life. And the best thing about this spiritual philosophy is that at any moment we can choose a new beginning. It's called new thought. Have a new thought about life. And if we all were to have a new thought and go to that spiritual truth of who we are, we would be reminded that there's always this whole, unique, precious, loving self. And if we knew that, how could we not be grateful? If we let our new thought awaken us to knowing who we really are, ageless and truly deathless, immortal in some ways, beautiful and powerful, abundant beings, how would we not have an attitude of gratitude? In any circumstances, we can find something for which to be grateful. I encourage people to keep a gratitude journal and each night to put some entries in the journal about what they're grateful for. Now, I confess that some evenings I have to say I was grateful to have running water in my house because it didn't seem like a great day. But there is always something that we can find to be grateful about in our lives. And the nice thing is, when we're having a bad day, we can read our gratitude journal, and it might shift our thinking to be happy for what we have instead of sad for what we lack. The bottom line, under any circumstances, there's something to be grateful for. So I know that everyone can always find 3 things every evening to be grateful for. It's a way that we create best practices. And by the way, the things that you think about right before you go to bed for that last 20 minutes is what your mind works on. So if you think about your gratitude things right before you go to sleep, your mind's going to work on gratitude all night, and you'll wake up feeling different. Different between the experience of the moment and your head trips. Difference between what's actually happening in your life and where your mind is taking you about what is happening. Because what we want to do is we want to enhance those ways of looking at whatever's going on in life is a lesson for us to learn. So if we stopped for a moment right now and just paused and breathed in the moment, this particular moment in time, it's one of life's great levelers. It's one of life's great lessons to be able to just stop and breathe. So I'm going to invite you to avoid writing those old scripts of your life over and over again, and to rewrite some new way of believing that whatever it is that your mind's telling you about the current moment, you can choose for it to be a moment that's a lesson or a moment that's a happy moment. You can create a new script for gratitude. In our philosophy, we believe that God is in everything, and that means not just in the things that we think are the good stuff, but in all the things, including the things that irritate us and those circumstances in our life that challenge who we are and what we believe and challenge our sense of peace and calm. So what I've noticed in my own life is when there's one of those challenges or one of those things that seems irritating, that it's an opportunity in my life for me to look at what are my expectations and how do I think life should be. The late, great John O'Donohue, in To Bless the Space Between Us, wrote this quote, which I dearly love. Each of us is an artist of our days. The greater our integrity and awareness, the more original and creative our time will become. An artist of our days. You know, if we really believed that every thought we had, that every motion that we took, that everything that we did, we were creating our day, how would we behave? And the truth is, every thought, every action, everything we do is creating our day. What if you were going to design your perfect day? How would it look? I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to just think about your perfect day. And now I have a question for you. How many of you in your perfect day put in anything that was a challenge, anything that was associated with pain, anything that was associated with a struggle? I would venture to say that nobody out there is going to put something in their perfect day that's a struggle or painful or hurtful in any way. And yet, what do we do with our thoughts when we're being the artist of our day? How do we let our thoughts go to those things that irritate us or those people that we're aggravated with? How do we hold on to things that maybe we've done and regret that we did it? We are the artist of our days. So be in integrity with what you want in your day when you're thinking about your day. What if each night, when we decided to go to sleep, we released the day, all of the day, everything that happened, the good, the bad, the ugly. If we let go of all that had happened in that day and just truly released it so that we could get up and start afresh, how do you think that your day, the following day, would go? And yet, we're not very good, I think, at releasing. Or maybe you are, but I'm not. I sometimes hang on to things. And that hanging on keeps me from having an attitude of gratitude about the day that's coming. And also, when I can release the day, what if I just had an attitude of gratitude about all that happened that day, because the things that I didn't like were probably there to teach me a lesson at some level. What if we believe truly that God is for us and nothing is against us? It'd be easy to have an attitude of gratitude because we would notice that everything that came into our life had a purpose. And not only just a purpose, but a positive purpose for our lives and for that opportunity for us to spiral upward in our spirituality and our understanding of who the divine truly is and who we are as a part of this one life. Ken Aucoin said this: "Today I choose life. Every morning when I wake up, I can choose joy, happiness, negativity, pain. To feel the freedom that comes from being able to continue to make mistakes and choices, today I choose to feel life. Not to deny my humanity, but to embrace it." How many of you get up in the morning and say, "Oh, I didn't get enough sleep. Oh, I don't have a time enough this morning to do this, that, or the other before I have to leave for work"? You fill in the blank. How do you start your morning? Because how you start your morning is going to put some belief in how the day's going to go. You can choose to believe that ideas from the past have been planted in your mind. A lot of us do have past ideas, past beliefs that we gathered up from our parents or our grandparents or our great-grandparents, and those seeds are still harvesting in us. It doesn't help us if they're not our thoughts. What is going on? And what I invite you to do is, when someone else tries to predict negative difficulties in your life, run in the other direction, or just say, "I don't want to talk about that right now. I'm just going to know that it's all going to work out." It's not to deny that in our human forms we have challenges, but it's about how do we approach those challenges. I hope that makes sense. If we truly are the artist of our days and we choose negativity, what are we going to expect that day? I don't ask the why question very often, but I want you to consider, why would you choose anything other than an attitude of gratitude in the morning if you're going to be the artist of your day? Ernest Holmes, in Ideas of Power, said, "God is the divine presence inhabiting eternity and indwelling in our lives." The divine presence that indwells in our lives. If we remember that God was indwelling in our lives, couldn't we get up in the morning and say, "Wow, it's going to be a great day"? I saw this play once. It was called Evan Hansen, and at the beginning he starts and he says, "Dear Evan Hansen, today is going to be a great day because," and then he lists a few things why it's going to be a great day. I love to get up in the morning and say, "Dear Larry, today's going to be a great day because," and think of a few things that are going to make my day great. That's being the artist of your day, and that's painting your life as a beautiful painting instead of as something that's dark and evil or ugly to you. And there's this thing called the spiritual domino effect. Genevieve Behrend, in Your Invisible Power, wrote this: "There's nothing unusual or mysterious in the idea of your picture desire coming into material evidence. Everything in the world, from the hat on your head to the boots on your feet, has its beginning in mind and comes into existence in exactly the same manner. All are projected thoughts, solidified. So if everything happens twice, once in your mind and once in that outer experience that we talked about, why would we not start the day with an attitude of gratitude? Our fortune, our future, is always a self-contemplation of the one. And it's initiated in our mind because everything happens twice. So let's talk about that spiritual domino effect, because it's the rule, it's not the exception. Have you ever considered that your biggest investment opportunity is sitting square on your shoulders? Our minds are amazing ways to manifest what we want. And one of the ways we manifest what we want is to start our days with an attitude of gratitude. I think we've all heard the old adage, what goes around comes around. It's a true and powerful adage. And we all understand what it means. What we put out comes back to us, and we often say in this philosophy, not only does it come back to us, but it comes back to us multiplied abundantly. There was a lady, and she had had a flat tire, and it happened to be way out in the country, and not many people had come by, but nobody had stopped to help her, and it was starting to get a little bit dark, and she was getting a little bit scared, and along came this man, and he got out of his car, and she recognized that because of the situation, she was a little bit hesitant about what was going to happen. And he said, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Brian Anderson, and I'm really here to help you. Why don't you just sit in your car, let me change your flat tire, and then you can be on your way. So the lady got in her car, and he spent the time changing her flat tire. It started to get a little drizzly, and the weather wasn't all that wonderful, and he got a little wet, but he kept going. And when he finished, she said, well, what do I owe you? And he said, no, this was an act of kindness. And all I request is that in the future, when you have that opportunity, pay it forward. And so she got in her car and was on her way, and he made sure that she was doing okay. And then he was heading home. And he was really tired. He'd had a really long day. He started work at early in the morning, and he was still looking for a better job. Well, she decided to stop at this little cafe in the town that was right down the road, and she stopped and got some dinner. And when she got ready to leave, the waitress brought her the check, and she left a $100 bill. And she left before the waitress could bring her change. And when the waitress came back to the table, there was $400 bills under a napkin with a little note that said, this is a random act of kindness, and all that I ask is in the future, when you can, pay it forward. And the waitress is thinking, oh my gosh, this is almost $500. And there was still some time before the cafe closed, so the waitress finished her shift and then went home, and she was getting ready to get in bed, and she was thinking about how wonderful the universe is, because this lady had left her money. She was pregnant. She didn't know how they were going to pay for all the things they needed. Her husband only had this part-time job, and she was working at this cafe. How was she actually ever going to be able to thank this lady for this wonderful gift? And as she was getting ready for bed and getting in bed and thinking about all that had happened in the day, she, with the baby due the next month, she thought, wow, my husband is just gonna love the fact that we don't have to worry quite so much about how things are gonna be the next month or two. And she crawled into bed, she kissed her husband, and she said, I love you so much, Brian Anderson. His good deed had come back immediately to bless him. What went around came around for him right away. And I think if we each chose to pay forward all the kindness that we've received in our lives. You know, sometimes kindness can be as little a thing as somebody letting you go ahead of them in a grocery line because you only have a couple items and they have a whole buggy full. That happened to me recently when I was in a real big hurry at Costco, and I'd only run in to get a couple items, and the person in front of me had a huge buggy full, and she said, "Why don't you go in front of me?" And it was such a nice little act of kindness, and I was grateful because it helped me get to my appointment on time. Sometimes we don't recognize how much good there is in the world. What if each of us chose every day to pay forward some past kindness that we remember? This quote from Creative Mind by Ernest Holmes, and it says this: "Wake up. Your word is all powerful. Your consciousness is one with omnipotence. Your thought is infinite. Your destiny is eternal. And your home is everlasting heaven. Realize the truth. I am living in a perfect universe. It always was perfect and always will be perfect. There never was a mistake made. There are no mistakes being made, and there never will be. I live in the great and eternal universe of perfection, from cause to effect, from beginning to end, and the world's all right, and I know it." Wake up. The world's all right. We just need to affirm that and know it. If we keep those words in mind, there's no doubt that we'll all live with an attitude of gratitude. There's no doubt that we'll recognize that what is happening around us is meant to be happening. Jean Houston said that we all have the extraordinary coded within us, waiting to be released. I invite you to release your extraordinary, to recognize that there is a spiritual domino effect, that you can live every day, beginning the day by saying, "Dear Larry," or whatever your name happens to be, "today's going to be a great day because." When we affirm that the world is perfect and will always be perfect, no matter what it looks like in the outer world, remember, we're on two journeys. The outer journey, which is how we see other people and they see us. And that inner journey, which is the deeper journey to awakening, that deeper journey to the spiritual life that's the essence of who we are, that everlasting life. I'm going to challenge you actually to try, at least for 1 week, to go to bed every night and think of 3 things you can be grateful for. And every morning to wake up and say, "Dear whatever, today's going to be a great day because." Let's pray. God is such an amazing being in our lives, an amazing spirit that flows in, through, and as each of us. The love, the freedom, the joy, the peace, the ease that God is exactly who we are. There is absolutely nothing within us that is keeping us from having a life that is filled with love and joy. We get to choose. Remember the quote, we get to choose. Are we going to be joyful or negative? It's our choice, because everything happens twice. First in the mind and then in reality. And I'm actually grateful to know that the God without is the God living within each of us. I'm grateful to know that I get to choose, and everyone watching this gets to choose how they start their day, how they end their day, how they look at the challenges that show up during their day as either a lesson or as some negative event. And it's from the gratitude of knowing that this philosophy supports us in knowing the truth of our being, that I release all these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action. Because what I know is Spirit has already said yes. In that eternal timeline, everything that we have desired is already done. So I can just say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is.